And good evening, everybody, and thanks for tuning in to the Definitive Debates One-on-One series, sponsored by Stoughton News on Facebook and PMP Network. I'm Mark Snyder, columnist for the Stoughton Journal since 1998, when I was only 8 years old, alongside Jeffrey Pickett, News and Program Director for SMAC, who will be asking the questions tonight. Responses are 60 seconds and rebuttals will be 45 seconds. Closing statements will be 60 seconds if time is available. We'll try to squeeze in as many questions as we can in the 30 minutes that we have. This debate is between Peter Brown and Rick Hill, and we're going to talk a little bit about the recall. Before we begin, Jeffrey Pickett will actually talk about the ballot question.
All right.
And then you'll go, and the first question will go to Peter Brown.
All right. Well, for the record, Mark, I just want to point out in the two previous debates, you said you were 12 when you started, and then you were 10, and now you're 8. So I just want to.
I'm getting younger as we go along.
Yeah, Benjamin Button factor there. But so, anyways, on to the reason why we're here tonight, and that is the debate between Peter Brown and Rick Hill, and this is for the seat that expires in April 2019. So, as we've been explaining in the other debates, let's explain how this will work when you go to the ballots. It's a 2-question process for each of the 3 races, and you will be asked if you are for or against the recall of the incumbent selectman, and in this case, it is Peter Brown. And then, regardless of how you voted for that first question, for or against the recall, you will then be asked your preferred candidate to fill that seat. And again, the 2 choices for this particular race, the seat that expires in April 2019, it's Rick Hill, the challenger, and the incumbent, Peter Brown. So again, you have to vote for both questions, regardless of how you voted for the first. So, with that being said, let's get right into the questions, Mark.
And the first one will go to Peter Brown.
All right.
And by the way, I thought we were here for a lumberjack competition, so I was dressed appropriately for that.
I guess we didn't get the memo. So,
expected cold.
So, I'd like to talk about the affidavits that were filed to basically kick off the recall process. And in each of the 3 of you, along with Mr. Brown, also Mr. Cohn and Mr. Souza, were charged with acting improperly in the performance of your office, where you had a duty to act, including but not limited to the failure to properly evaluate the town manager in accordance with the terms of the contract between the town of Stoughton and the town manager. So I'd like to discuss the town manager evaluation situation, as both of us have discussed this in interviews. It's also come up with other candidates, so I'd like to get each of your take on this specific charge on the affidavit with the recall.
First, thank you. Thank you. Good luck to my opponent here. I want to first say that put some rest to the ridiculous characterization about qualifications in education. There's been a lot of talk about what qualifications you need to be on the Board of Selectmen. I have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from Northeast University, and my qualifications speak for themselves as far as whether you need all this stuff or if you need an education to serve the town government. The answer is certainly not. The evaluation question that you're asking me about, we spoke at length last time I was here. First off, the Board of Selectmen in entirety would be required to provide an evaluation. In fact, I believe the town manager was constantly under an evaluation. I spoke with him on many occasions. Whether or not he got a written evaluation by our board or not is basically the reason why they mentioned one of the charges. But the interesting question is how is it only 3 people responsible for that evaluation when 5 were serving on the board? Currently 1 person who's still on the board who wasn't charged with that. You can't have 3 people not responsible for only 1 issue. And I guess my time is up.
Rick?
So the town manager is required by charter to be qualified by education and by experience. And that's part of the criteria that you use in a search for a town manager that's going to be running a $100 million operation. With regards to the review, the one person that we're talking about that wasn't charged was somebody that wasn't against giving him a review. As a matter of fact, the night that they had voted not to renew the town manager's contract, he was asking why they couldn't get a review on the agenda. And the chairman controls the agenda like a weapon. So you know, whatever he wants to get on gets on, what doesn't, doesn't. And you know, the review never made it to the agenda and was asked for, to my knowledge.
Do you want to respond to that?
Absolutely incorrect. I asked Mr. O'Regan on February 24th of 2017 to do an evaluation, and his response to me prior to the election was, no, if we do an evaluation now on the town manager, it will look either vindictive or manipulative. So Mr. O'Regan was very much part of not providing the evaluation, and for somebody, this is exactly what this group has been doing, sitting and pointing fingers at what we haven't done. And the facts are true. If you look past what they continue to talk about, process and this and that, it's just total fallacy. Mr. O'Regan was involved, did not provide, and didn't push for. In fact, didn't complete the evaluation process that there was agreed to do, him and Mr. Cohen.
Do you want to respond to that, Rick?
I sure do. Mr. O'Regan had pressed for an evaluation, and it was due to the town manager as part of his contract. It wasn't up for negotiation, but the fact that Mr. Brown and Mr. Souza said that they kept going back to negotiate with the town manager after they had voted not to renew his contract after that December meeting is what's perplexing. They thought it was a done deal. So whatever happened in exchange with Mr. O'Regan and Mr. Brown is certainly up to them. Those aren't anything that have been entered into the record, so I'm not going to comment on them. At this point, I know that Mr. O'Regan was emphatic about fulfilling the obligation of giving Mr. Hartman an evaluation. And Mr. Souza was on record saying he absolutely was not going to give him one in our interview that he did here.
Okay.
Now, I don't know if you want to stay on this, but I would enjoy talking about the process about the town manager. In December 2016, when we gave him notification that we may not renew his contract in July, he was on notice as of December. Whether or not an evaluation according to the charter, this is what they put. They point to the charter when it's convenient for their argument. Mr. O'Regan did not push or encourage or ask for, other than the discussion that was taking place between him and Mr. Cohen during the actual Board of Selectmen meeting. To say anything different is not representing fact. It's just pointing again to what's not there and what they want you to believe. They're going to continue to point to the process and how we arrived at all these decisions, and yet it was all incorrect. The bottom line is there was no evaluation. There was 5 people on the Board of Selectmen at the time. 3 can't be responsible for it. They can't be. You can't. And even if Mr. O'Regan is not a guy who will sit silent, bye. You don't need to remind me of my time.
Did you want to respond to that, or?
No, we'll
Oh, of course.
Okay, good.
So the letter not to renew didn't say may not to renew. It said we're not renewing your contract, plain and simple. So this may language wasn't there. Point of fact is that they had a responsibility to give the town manager a review and failed to do that. You know, as a result, we're in violation of his contract.
Okay, next question is going to Rick. Jeff.
All right. So let's discuss the current status of kind of like how we got here. Continuing on the town managers, we talked about the evaluation process, the actual process of informing him that he wasn't going to have his contract extended, and then the appointments of interim town managers. Rick, many people who I'd say support the recall now, when the town manager may have been fired, or they were looking to potentially take a vote to fire the town manager back in, I believe, August 2016, were pleading, just wait until his contract expires in the end of June of the following year. So the board did that. Tell me about the process, because you clearly disagree with it. How do you disagree with the process? Well,
the process is spelled out in the charter. So it says it takes 3 to hire and 4 to fire. The reason for that is because the selectmen are voted in every year. There can be a new board every year, and certainly a new political prevailing wind, so that to prevent a minor majority from continuing to turn over a town manager's job, which is it's a hard to fill position, to find the right people and the qualified people for it. The charter specifies that you need 4 people to fire him. They didn't do that. They didn't call for a vote. They didn't ask for a vote. They never proceeded down that path. They just summarily said, we're not renewing your contract, and then just let it run out. And oh, by the way, they did it while he was out of town on a Family Medical Leave Act, locked him out of his office, sent his personal belongings to the police station, and served him with a no trespass. It was awful.
Well,
Peter?
that's absolutely laughable. First off, I won as a write-in candidate because the town, 3 unions took no confidence votes against the town manager when they ran the chief out of town back in February of 2016. I won in April of 2016. The question was whether I was going to be the 4th vote to get rid of the town manager. I said I would not just take a vote on that, on just that issue itself. I wanted to see what the story was, what the actual facts were behind the whole thing. So December 16th, whether the wording is may or not, the bottom line is we put the town manager on notice that we would potentially be looking in other places. We told the town manager he could participate in the process. We wanted to look at other options. We didn't think that the town manager was doing that great a job. In fact, I'm convinced now today than ever that we made the right decisions. In fact, I'm proud of the decisions we've made. So the fact about process, they want to continue to point to process. I believe the definition of a process is a series of actions that try to achieve a particular end. I would start pointing at the end and some of the decisions that we have made that are actually beneficial to the town of Stoughton.
Okay, your
Please.
time's up.
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
So a question was asked before, don't the results just matter? Isn't that what's important here and not the way we got there? And I would argue no. So the town manager was probably the catalyst for this recall, but certainly was not the main issue. There are many, many issues associated with the recall, but in this particular case, the town manager was let go and not through process. So we talk about process. Let's talk about the process of hiring interim town managers. Just on the drop of a dime, we've got one selectman raising his hand, nominating somebody, and then somebody else immediately, without questioning the nomination at all, raises their hand to second it, and then it's a vote for all in favor, and it's done. 6 minutes to hire a town manager for a $170,000 job to run a $100 million corporation. I'd say that process really does matter, and that's a gaping hole in the process.
Well, I'm glad my opponent will talk about process because we're in a process. This election that we're doing in December of this coming year was not part of the process, but because less than 6% of the voters, this particular group that is anti-majority of selectmen, and and I'm going to share why I think this is the case, but $26,000 to be spent on an election that he ran in April. He lost in April. He ran against the chairman. He lost by 50-something votes. I don't know why the chairman wouldn't be in his sights at this time. The point is this. The process has never been flawed. We followed the process. The Attorney General has said that. The Superior Court judge has said that. The only people that haven't said that are the people looking to unseat us in December of 2017.
Did you want to respond, Rick?
Sure. Superior Court judge ruled on really its stay. So Hartman took 5 actions. One was to sue the town, and then to sue the individual selectmen individually, and then to file for a stay of the termination. And a Superior Court judge said that he wasn't going to suffer irreparable harm because he had recourse to get money to pay for it. So process does matter. This is spelled out in the charter. This, to me, was kind of a cowardly way of going around the charter without having to be exposed for not following the process. And the vote in December is part of the process. It's part of the charter, and that's just the way it works. We got over 2,000 people to sign papers to say we want to recall the 3 selectmen and to nominate these 3 individuals to be on that ticket.
Well, again, first off, the federal lawsuit, I had an opportunity to watch a couple of the candidates prior to coming in here. They talk about lawsuit, the selectman being sued. First off, he filed charges against the town, and he also filed against 3 individuals, myself, Sousa, and Cohn. That case went to federal court. he had to drop his charges immediately against the selectmen, myself, Mr. Cohen, and Mr. Souza, because he tried to include civil rights violations. Those charges were immediately dropped. Then the case was moved back to Superior Court, where the judge ruled that he didn't have a case. He had no cause for the job. The contract spoke for itself. See, what they don't want you to know is that he had a contract, and in his contract it spells out that he could be removed by not having a contract renewed in July of 2017. I don't know how many people came before us the summer before and asked us to allow him. Heck, Mark, you had an article in March of 2016 that said, let the town manager finish his contract. There was no secret here. From December of 2016 through July of 2017, there was no secret that this board was looking at different directions. They want to point to that and say there was secrets. Yeah, you left them outside and when he was away or what have you. Sorry.
Okay, Rick, go ahead.
So it's confusing because, there were 5 actions taken by Mr. Hartman. And, I think one of the charges on one of those was dropped so they could expedite the rest of them because it would have taken too long to pursue that one charge. So that was done. The selectmen at the time terminated the contract, but the contract didn't say you're terminated as of this date. It defaults to the charter, by the way, and state law defaults to the charter in terms of language about employment of the town manager and the contract. So in lieu of the, and I'll call it an employment agreement that specifies benefits pretty much, the language was clear inside that agreement that it was for, that it defaulted to the charter and to state law.
Okay, we're going to go to the next
Well,
question.
I just want to say one
Hey,
thing.
no,
It's defaulted to the court.
Peter, we're going to the next question, and it's going to you. Go ahead.
All right, I'd like to talk again, just hearing from the two of you, hearing from the other candidates, very different views of how this Board of Selectmen has performed. So I'd like you to be able to say what the board has been able to do in the course of your time, or what it, in your view, has not been able to do.
Well, in spite of this recall effort, the disruptions of Board of Selectmen meetings and the continued social media warfare against this board, we've been able to do a number of things. First off, I'll talk about the interim town manager. He's a huge success. Everything that he's been doing has been outstanding. In fact, I will point to the high school project. Mr. Hill sits on the committee, so he should be well versed in this. There was no financing, no pursuit of financing for this total project prior to Mr. Anastas getting into town manager as the intern. The rate that we got, that they put together, his team and his financial package, saved the taxpayers over 14% in savings in their tax bill because they got a rate of 2.695 opposed to 3-something that they were talking about during Mr. Hartman's day. But the real secret here is Mr. Hartman never pursued the financing of it. They borrowed some money up front for a library and to get the high school project off the ground, but never pursued the actual financing of the entire project. Now it's been financed. In fact, they're taking advantage of the great savings that we had, $6 million at least on the top of this project, because of the excellent job that the financing team, along with, I will commend the Board of Selectmen as well as the Finance Committee and Town Meeting for the good job they've been doing in budgeting.
Rick?
So, where to begin? Michael Hartman had started working on financing, and so he's not here. The treasurer was here at the time that he was working with, is gone as well, has retired. But irregardless, the high school building committee committed to putting out and being transparent to all the residents worst case scenario. So we published a rate of 3.5% on a 20-year bond, knowing that that was high, knowing that the cost of money was coming down, and that the town certainly should be able to do better than that, but we wanted to make sure that we presented worst case scenario. So now there's, the Board of Selectmen and the town manager, interim town manager, are taking a parade on this whole thing. And it's like, it was expected, and we knew it was going to happen. And, the result was, after a lot of hard work, we got a terrific deal, which was expected.
I don't know what he means by the Board of Selectmen and the town manager holding a parade. First off, we're all residents. They have been doing nothing but pointing to the negative, trying to get people to basically fear-mongering. This board hasn't done this board's done this board hasn't done this. Listen, we are all responsible for the high school, not just this committee, although they worked hard on it. There's many things we can talk about, whether or not they did right or not. But this entire Board of Selectmen has supported these projects time and time again, whether it be the library, the high school, Glenelg, or any of these other things that are now moving because we've actually taken action. They cannot deny the facts. The facts speak for themselves. All you have to do is take a look at it. They'll continue to tell you that it's not happening, but the Board of Selectmen is every bit as responsible for the high school as the Finance Committee, as Town Meeting, as planning boards, and you name it, including their committee as well.
Did you want to respond, Rick?
Sure. So the the chairman of the Board of Selectmen had said that he was going to kill that project. And he also went in front of the Friends of Seniors and said that they shouldn't vote for the project. Before he turned around and said, okay, well, maybe we should. And then he was in support of it. Library, he was looking to put together an article for a special town meeting for the town meeting to withdraw the funding on the library. So, to say that they're 100% behind this thing the whole time just not the case. Every project that they're talking about, I want to take credit for. There's an ad in the Penny Saver today on the back page. And everything it says record of facts. This is a record of exactly why they're being recalled. And I'll go over this at a little bit later time, but every one of these things is a misrepresentation of what it's designed to do.
I have to counter because Mr. Hill is on record as speaking against the library project. He's on record saying that it wasn't a good project. In fact, he was complaining about the $1 million that was spent on the parking next to it. There were some concerns with the library, there still are. But I don't know what the chairman was getting together about a motion or a warrant for special town meeting. I never seen it. It never materialized. The point is this: we should be able to take credit for supporting, not braggadocious and not in a way of saying we got this done, but we're supporting these projects as well as he is, or whatever the case may be. But if the truth is known, he opposed the new library. In fact, I remember it as it was yesterday. He actually said, I wasn't supporting the library. Mr. Hill seems to have a record in flip-flopping on some of these things, and I'd like to ask him to explain. Do you now support the library?
Sure.
Okay.
I think that I'm recalling the meeting you're talking about where I questioned the library. So in my own personal financial world, if I've got an opportunity to step back, because there was an opportunity, town meeting had to revote the library article because it was language that was insufficient for bond counsel to be able to finance the project. So when you have that opportunity, you step back and say, let's talk about the pros and cons here. Does it make sense to look at a different project, expand the project, collapse the project? I'd always thought it was a tough location. It's on a postage stamp. I did rail against the parking lot just because, we spent almost $1 million adding like 25 parking spots to the library. So, yeah, I certainly, took the time to stop and think through again, which I would expect the residents for me to do at every opportunity you get to do it. The reason I did it was because it was going to go before town meeting, and it was voted unanimously at that time, which I voted with it at that time to renew the project.
We're going to go right to the last question.
Likely
and this
the
is
last
going to
question.
go. I think it's going to be the last question, and this is for Rick.
Okay, I'd like each of you to be able to discuss what you will bring to the Board of Selectmen, because besides just the merits of the recall, you're also choosing the people who will be serving on the board, whether you want to keep the current board or replace it with new members. So I'd like you to discuss what you would bring to the Board of Selectmen.
This goes to you, Rick, first.
Okay, well, I think anybody that's going to be in that position on December 6th is just going to have their hands full. So whatever combination of people, if it's the existing board, or if it's a combination of the existing board and people that are running, or it's all new people with the two that are there. The fact of the matter is that there's a job to be done. And so you're just going to have to hunker down and get the work done. So we've got, walking into that particular time, whoever again is on that board, has budgets to deal with, and they've got capital plans to put in place because budgets have to be to the Finance Committee by a certain period in January, third Tuesday, and then behind that, the warrants have to be done for the special town meeting. And you've got, oh, by the way, let's hire a town manager and start that process in motion. And a bunch of other projects that are on the agenda in the docket right now that have to be watched over and shepherded and make sure that they get done correctly.
It's certainly true. This is a terrible time to have an election. I mean, if April would have been the best case scenario because we are in the middle of a budget process. But I think all of that, what Mr. Hill said and more. In fact, I believe that I bring a proven record. I think that we've been making decisions that have been courageous, strong. I believe transparency. I believe the process has been supported by numerous agencies, whether it be the Attorney General or the District Judge, the Superior Court Judge. But more importantly, the Board of Selectmen needs people that are going to, this town needs people that are going to represent the people and their interests, not special interests, not special agendas, and not projects that would be great to have, but not necessarily we need to have. So that's what I bring to the Board of Selectmen and still will, I hope.
We now have an opportunity.
I should be able to respond to that.
Oh, go ahead.
We have a little time.
So transparency, following process, hiring interim town managers in 6 minutes, putting a contract out there and not letting the other two on the board look at it and review it. And if they had taken 10 minutes to take a look at it and reviewed it and approved it, I'd have wanted to recall them as well. So this is a significant issue. The board today, the temperament on the board is a problem. The yelling at citizens and each other, and the argumentation, and it looks like the lack of preparation. There's a conspiracy. There are special interests out there. There's there's hate. There's people hiding behind trees everywhere. There's the people that are running for the office have some reason, some special dark secret we don't know about. And even the chairman said in his last interview, I don't know what that is, but they've got one. And I'd love to know what it is.
Okay, well, I don't know if we're going to get into the closing things, but I don't know where Mr. Hill has been for the last several months, but I could tell you everything he just said is absolutely true, and then some. There has been a lot of that, but this is not the time for discussion. I don't know if you want to get into closing.
We do want to get into closing, and that Rick is going to go first. 45 seconds is what we have left for each of you. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to sit here and chat about the issues. There are a lot of issues in the town, and we really need to focus on paying attention to them at this point. So I think my concerns originally and have always been about process and about temperament, and I think that we are sorely lacking in both of those areas today. We've got a block on the board of three individuals that just seem to run their agenda and don't want to include the entire board of 5, and that's limiting, and I think that's a huge problem. So I'm running because I think I can help. I have a lot of qualification, having been in town meeting for 15 years, 16 years actually, with the Charter Review Committee, the Finance Committee, and currently for the last 3 years, the High School Building Committee. So anyways, thank you.
Thank you. And
I
Peter?
had an opportunity, like I said earlier, to watch the other candidates, and they got the talking points down, and they've been well prepped. And the truth is, the bottom line is that myself, Cone, and Souza are the best options right now. We represent the interests of Stoughton. I asked it on December 5th. You remember that, because we're working hard. We'll continue to work hard. And we want to put this past us, because on December 5th, I want to be able to get back to business. And I want to thank everybody and ask them for their vote. Again, Souza, Brown, and Cone, you'll have the option, and we appreciate your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you both for coming tonight. We really appreciate it. And I want to thank Tomas Bernadas, our timekeeper, Director Michael Hammond, CJ Mullen on cameras, and Dave Young for technical assistance. And just want to remind everybody that you should vote on December 5th, because if you don't vote, don't complain. Writing on Facebook isn't a vote. Go to the booth. Good night, everybody, and thank you for watching our debates.